The worst part of revenge, I learned, isn't the moment you deliver the blow. It's the slow architecture of collapse that follows. The way one small crack makes a ceiling cave in, then another, until whole rooms you took for granted are rubble. I thought I'd planned for this. I hadn't planned for how empty the house would feel with two people you thought you knew suddenly strangers. After Mark was put on leave and Stella went nuclear, things moved faster than the calendar had any right to allow. Mark called me twice, once to beg, once to threaten, and I let both calls go to voicemail. He left messages that sounded like a man running out of exits. I saved them. They felt like evidence the way a fossil is evidence of something that once lived and breathed. Jessica's boss at the design firm called me the day after the divorce papers were served. At first I thought they were calling to ask if I wanted a meeting. Instead, she read me a list of concerns the firm had and asked if I could come into the office. She sounded careful, like someone deciding between loyalty and risk. "I'll bring what I have," I said. The meeting was clinical. HR had policed itself into a frenzy as soon as Stella marched in with the USB. They pulled emails indicating that Jessica had been routing certain clients through Mark's firm, that she'd used the company card for a dinner that matched one of the hotel receipts, and that files had been inappropriately shared. Whether it was criminal or civil wasn't their first concern. The firm cared about exposure and billable hours and the way a scandal could scare away clients. They terminated her employment with a note that said, simply, effective immediately. Watching Jessica collect a few things from her desk felt obscene. She moved slower than I expected, like someone inside Jell-O. People avoided her in the hallway with the courtesy of strangers watching an accident. I felt a part of myself that had been sitting on a little island of bitterness relax, because that island had another shore now and it wasn't my problem to cross to. The legal wheels turned with the same cold efficiency. My attorney filed for temporary exclusive use of the marital home and emergency custody of Sarah. The judge granted both on the basis of evidence and the argument that stability for our daughter mattered more than open access to a destabilized household. The bank froze the joint accounts pending further orders. The retirement accounts were tied up in paperwork. It felt like stacking stones until nothing could move. People ask, sometimes, whether you feel triumph when the other person loses everything. The answer is complicated. On the one hand, seeing Jessica sit at the kitchen table in a hoodie that no longer fit and watch condolences turn to avoidance among her friends. Yes, it hit something cold and sweet inside me. On the other, every corner I cut to exact the revenge left me with a ring of silence. Neighbors looked at me like they were waiting to see which of us would apologize first. I started to feel like an archaeologist of our marriage, unearthing bones I had once loved. But I didn't stop there. I set another, quieter part of the plan in motion: reputation. In the world we live in, reputation is brittle and social currency travels fast. I contacted two of Jessica's former colleagues and offered to let them see evidence of her misconduct. I didn't smear her, I showed facts. People with mortgages and reputations of their own didn't want to be tainted by association. One of them, a woman named Claire who'd always been friendly to either of us at neighborhood barbecues, called Jessica and asked whether the rumors were true. Jessica stuttered. Claire unfriended her on every social platform that had such a function. The ripple became a small, mean ocean. At the same time, I kept my messages to friends tight and curated. I didn't throw a tantrum on Facebook. When people asked what happened, I said something like, "We're separating." It's complicated. That was all. Letting the silence speak made the emptiness around her louder. People filled it with their own assumptions. There was one element of the revenge that surprised me with how effective it felt: the change of beneficiaries. I sat with my financial planner, the man who'd watched me buy my first house and who'd lectured me about the patience of investment, and we updated my life insurance and retirement beneficiary forms. It was legal and simple. I named Sarah and my sister as beneficiaries instead of the name that used to be written in cursive on the paperwork. I felt almost giddy with a trivial godlike power I had never wanted. It was small, irreversible, intimate. In the rooms where the past could still be folded into the future, I closed the drawer. People will tell you a court won't hand you everything just because the other person slept around. They're right. Courts balance things by much colder arithmetic. Seethe and hurt feelings. But evidence matters. Documents matter. Stability for a child matters. And in the messy negotiation that followed, depositions, mediation sessions where we sat across from each other and used lawyers as filters for the uglier words, I found ways to press my advantage. I insisted on primary custody. Not because I wanted to punish her by keeping our daughter away. God knows I would never weaponize Sarah like that. But because I had taken the steps to show a judge that I could provide the safe, steady environment she needed while things were volatile. I had lined up my sister for help, prepared school pickup schedules, and arranged for counseling to be offered to Sarah. The judge granted me primary custody with generous visitation for Jessica contingent on therapy and regular accounting of her employment and living situation. That last condition, therapy and stability before unsupervised time, felt like the perfect, quiet twist. It wasn't mean. It wasn't about revenge exactly. It was about ensuring our daughter didn't inherit the chaos. But the way it hit Jessica, the humiliation of asking permission for mothering, had a bitter edge I didn't try to deny. When settlement talks began, I could have pushed for maximum financial pressure. I could have demanded the house be sold overnight and everything liquidated. Instead, I negotiated in a way that was surgical. I protected Sarah's future, kept the things she and I needed, and used the law to make sure Jessica couldn't simply walk away with the life we'd built together. I left her with enough to survive in a small apartment, to pay for counseling, to get a reset if she truly intended to repair what she'd broken. Part of me knew, perhaps the part that hadn't entirely turned to stone, that completely destroying someone is rarely satisfying in the long run. The legal world likes numbers. The human world needs something to hold on to. But justice, not mercy, was the dish I wanted to serve. Mark was gone. Jessica's bank accounts were frozen and then parceled out in a settlement that left her without access to the larger nest egg we'd built together. She lost the job she defined herself by. Friends stopped returning her calls. Stella, burned and vindicated, refused to speak to either of us again, and the firm let Mark go with a non-disclosure their lawyers loved. When the dust settled, there was a day I remember clearly. I sat at the kitchen table with a stack of legal documents that smelled faintly of printer ink and anxiety. Jessica came into the room with a box of things she'd taken from the garage. She set it down on the floor and looked at me. We were both exhausted. The air felt thin. "Is this over?" she asked. "For now," I said. She nodded like someone accepting a sentence. "I'm sorry," she said then, not with the practiced cadence of the woman who used to say it like a band-aid, but with real words that trembled. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know if I can give it," I said. "But I'll give Sarah what she needs." She closed her mouth and left. I watched her go and felt something like relief and something like grief. The house was quieter, not because a storm had passed but because a house that had held a marriage now held a contract and a new schedule and my daughter's toys in a different place. Revenge had been effective. It had been tidy where cruelty usually isn't. It had also been the most lonely project I'd ever undertaken. In the rubble of what had been, I found a small space of certainty. I had protected Sarah. I had made sure our life wouldn't be looted without consequence. I had shown Jessica what it looked like when a life built on secrecy collapsed under the weight of truth. But there was still a part of the story I hadn't told. A part that sat like a splinter behind my ribs and wouldn't come out no matter how much I manipulated calendars and lawyers. Mark had been a target. Jessica had been the other. The man who'd driven us both to this place still moved among people who respected him. He hadn't yet seen the full measure of what losing everything meant for him. And there was another thing. Revenge never fills the hole left by betrayal. It only makes the edges sharper. Part 5 would be the one that proved whether I'd merely punished them or whether I'd finally healed something inside myself. After the smoke cleared and the signatures were dry, most people assumed it was over. Jessica moved into a small 2-bedroom near the highway, the kind of place that smelled like paint and loneliness. Sarah saw her on weekends, supervised at first, then eased into unsupervised hours once her therapist signed off. I didn't poison our daughter's view of her mother. I didn't need to. Kids have a sixth sense when things go wrong, and Jessica had chosen her moment to self-destruct in full view of a daughter just old enough to understand disappointment. But I couldn't shake something loose inside me, a question I kept circling back to. Why Mark? Not just why she cheated, that answer was obvious. Boredom, control, maybe the attention he gave her felt like being chosen again, like those early years when she was still someone's favorite thing. I could almost understand that. What I couldn't understand, couldn't accept, was why him. Why that smug, empty suit of a man, the type who laughed at his own punchlines and needed everyone in the room to know he had power. I knew I had taken a lot from Jessica. I'd taken stability, reputation, money, and even custody. But Mark? He still had the one thing I couldn't touch with lawyers or documents. His name. Even after Stella blew up their marriage and his firm quietly let him go, his public image stayed weirdly intact. Nobody posted about him. His LinkedIn profile still claimed he was consulting independently. His friends, and he had many, shallow ones, didn't blast him on social media. Maybe because men like him know how to land on their feet. They've built lives on fallback plans. Men like him always find a way to rebrand their wreckage. Until I decided to finish what I started. I knew someone at a local legal ethics board, a guy I'd played golf with twice a year and mostly forgotten about. He owed me a favor, something small from years ago. I sent him a package. Inside were redacted copies of Jessica and Mark's messages, screenshots of confidential case info being shared between them, and a short, factual letter explaining how Mark's personal and professional boundaries had been thoroughly destroyed. No commentary, no angry language, just facts. My contact called me 2 days later. "You sure you want to go this route?" "Yes." He exhaled slowly. "You know this could ruin his license, right?" "I'm counting on it. Ethics boards don't move fast, but they move thoroughly. When they start sniffing around, people get nervous." Mark's old firm wasn't eager to reopen wounds, but under pressure, they admitted a few things off the record. Jessica had accessed case files while under NDA. Mark had encouraged her to redirect a client using confidential knowledge. And, worst of all, there were emails suggesting he had billed hours for work that was never done. That was the crack in the dam. A formal inquiry opened 3 weeks later. Mark's name was published in a public review list pending investigation. Quietly, his consulting gigs dried up. His reputation, so carefully curated, started to slip from handshakes and business cards to whispers and deleted contacts. It wasn't front-page news. But it was enough. He became the kind of person others crossed the street to avoid. He wasn't disbarred, not yet. But the sword now hung above his head, and it swung a little lower every day. That was the final cut. Jessica tried calling me once after she found out. She didn't leave a voicemail. I didn't call back. I figured she wanted to say something like "you didn't have to do that." But she was wrong. I did have to. Because that part of me, the part that needed to see justice done, not just for me but for the man I used to be, couldn't rest while he got to walk around clean. He didn't just help destroy a marriage. He did it with arrogance, like the lives he appended were collateral damage in the pursuit of his ego. And I wasn't going to let that stand. You might think, reading all this, that I became someone cold. That I lost something essential in chasing revenge. And yeah, I probably did. You don't walk through betrayal and come out the other side without leaving a part of yourself behind. But you also don't come out the same, and maybe that's the point. Because here's the truth no one likes to say out loud: closure isn't clean. It's not a perfect ending or a speech or an apology that fixes everything. It's a slow, uneven process of taking back your life piece by piece, sometimes with grace, and sometimes with fire. I didn't burn everything, but I burned enough. I kept the house. I kept custody. I rebuilt what I could and let the rest rot. I never saw Mark again, not in person. But once, late at night, I checked that ethics board's public site. His name had been updated. Status: under disciplinary review. License suspended pending investigation. I closed the laptop. Then I went to bed and slept through the night for the first time in months. There's a moment after the fire burns out where the silence doesn't feel like peace. It feels like aftershock. That's what the weeks following Mark's license suspension felt like. Not relief, not victory, just stillness. The kind of stillness you get after shouting for so long you forget what your own voice sounds like without the anger behind it. Jessica didn't try to fight anymore. Maybe she finally understood there was nothing left to salvage. Or maybe she realized that the version of me who used to compromise, who used to give and forgive and bend, that man was gone. Still, she showed up every other Saturday at noon, waiting at the edge of the driveway in her little sedan with its chipped paint and worn tires. She always came alone. No more Mark. No more makeup. No more excuses. She'd knock on the door, and I'd send Sarah out with her backpack and a snack and a tight hug. We didn't talk about Jessica in our house, not because I forbade it, but because Sarah didn't seem to want to. The few times she asked why things fell apart, I told her what I could in kid-sized language. Mom made some choices that hurt people, I said. Do you still love her? She asked once. I did. A lot. But love can't survive without truth. She was quiet after that. Then she hugged me and went back to watching her show. That's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal. The damage spreads. It doesn't just hit the two people in the marriage, it bleeds into the people around it. Friends started treating us both like a story they didn't want to be part of. People chose sides, quietly, awkwardly. Some stayed neutral, but even silence started to feel like judgment. I lost friends I thought were solid. Gained others I barely noticed before, who dropped by with beers and quiet nods when it counted. I never aired our story publicly. Never dragged Jessica's name through the mud online. I didn't need to. Truth has a way of leaking through cracks. The people who mattered saw the truth eventually. And the ones who didn't, I let them go. For a long time, my revenge had been the thing that kept me going. It gave me direction, purpose. It filled the space where love used to live. But after it was done, after Mark's world collapsed and Jessica's life was reduced to court dates and quiet desperation, I had to face a harder question. What now? There's no playbook for life after revenge. No template for what to do with the pieces once you've won the war. I had the house, the custody, the financial security. I had my peace. But I didn't have joy. Not yet. So I started small. I repainted the living room. Took down the old wedding photos and replaced them with pictures of Sarah at the beach, at school, grinning with frosting on her face from a birthday cake we made ourselves. I donated boxes of things, his and hers towels, his and hers wine glasses, anniversary trinkets that once meant something and now just took up space. I gave away the bed frame, bought a new one. Smaller, simpler, mine. I went back to the gym. Started waking up early again. It wasn't about a glow-up or revenge body or whatever people say. It was about control, about moving from survival mode to actually building a new routine. And slowly, I felt something shift. The rage that used to sit in my chest like a fist started to loosen. It didn't vanish. I won't lie to you and pretend it did, but it softened. It went from a daily companion to something I saw less and less often in the mirror. I ran into Jessica once at the grocery store, just past the cereal aisle. She looked tired, not broken, not tragic, just worn down in that way people get when they've had to start over with less than they expected. She looked up, surprised to see me. She gave me a small nod. Hey, she said, just that, hey. She looked at the cart. Sarah still eating the same cereal every day? Yeah, she's stubborn like her mom. She laughed a little, but it didn't reach her eyes. I know I don't deserve a clean slate, she said quietly. But I'm trying to do better. I didn't answer right away. I looked at her and realized something important. I no longer hated her. I didn't forgive her, not fully. But I didn't hate her. That's up to you, I said. It always was. She nodded again, then walked away. That was it. No tears. No apologies. Just two people with shared history passing each other in the wreckage. That night, I sat out on the porch after Sarah went to bed. I watched the wind move through the trees. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the guy who'd been cheated on. I wasn't just the ex-husband, or the victim, or the man who got revenge. I was just me, and for the first time, that felt like enough. You go through something like this, and people expect an ending. Some kind of dramatic finish, either redemption or ruin. But the truth? Life doesn't give you that. It gives you something messier, quieter. It gives you after the lies, after the revenge, after the dust settles and no one's watching anymore. That's where I live now. It's been almost a year since the day I handed Jessica that folder and watched the world we built fall apart. Some days it feels like a lifetime ago. Others, like it just happened. Mark lost his license, officially. Disbarred for misconduct, improper billing, and violations of client confidentiality. No courtroom drama. Just a quiet, final decision posted on a website most people don't even know exists. I didn't gloat when I saw it. I just stared at the words for a long time and then closed the tab. He doesn't know I was behind any of it. He probably never will. That's fine. I didn't do it for him. Jessica got a part-time job at a local flower shop. Something low stress, off the radar. She and Sarah have a decent relationship, considering everything. Sometimes Sarah comes home with a pressed daisy or little bouquet, and I don't ask where it came from. I don't need to. I'm glad they have that. Sarah deserves a mom, even if the version she gets now is less polished than the one I married. As for me, I'm okay. Better than okay, most days. I started seeing someone a few months back. Slowly, carefully. Her name's Lauren. She's not part of the same circle, doesn't know any of the backstory unless I choose to share it. She's kind. She listens more than she talks. And best of all, she asks me nothing from the past I'm not ready to give. The first time I told her about the divorce, I skipped the affair. I just said, it ended badly, and she didn't press. That alone was a kind of peace I hadn't known I needed. We go hiking on weekends sometimes, or just sit in the living room with coffee and silence. It's not fireworks. It's something better, stillness that doesn't feel like waiting for a bomb to drop. Sarah's doing great, school's solid, she's making friends, and she's picked up a habit of baking cookies on Sundays. Says it helps her feel like the house is hers again. I let her take the lead. We don't talk about what happened unless she brings it up, and when she does, I keep it simple. You didn't cause this. None of it was your fault. She nods. I know, and maybe she does. The house feels different now. I used to hate how empty it sounded at night after everything went down, but now I like the quiet. I like that nothing in here is hiding anything from me anymore. And Jessica? Well, she's surviving. Sometimes I wonder what goes through her head when she's alone. Does she regret it? Does she relive the night I found out, the look on my face, the way it all ended? Or has she just accepted her new life and moved on, the way people do when they don't know how to fix what they broke? I don't think she's evil. I don't think Mark was either. Just selfish, careless, like people who knock down walls in a house they don't plan on staying in. The truth is, I stopped needing revenge the moment I stopped needing her. That's the part no one tells you. Healing doesn't come after you ruin the other person. It comes the moment you decide to build something new without them. The moment you finally breathe, really breathe, and realize you're not waiting anymore. You're living, and if there's an ending, that's it. Not revenge, not forgiveness, just freedom, quiet, earned, mine.